The Galactic Council had gathered to witness what they believed would be the final chapter of a troublesome species. Ambassador Zethrix of the Velori Collective stood at the observation deck, her three eyes fixed on the blue and green world below. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for a world that had caused the Council so much concern. "The asteroid impact is confirmed," said High Counselor Morthax, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. 70% of all life will be eliminated. The humans, if any survive, will be reduced to scattered tribes. They will pose no threat to galactic order for at least 10,000 cycles. Zethrix nodded slowly. The Council had voted unanimously. Humanity had grown too fast, spread too quickly across their solar system. In just 300 years, they had gone from simple chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. No species in recorded history had advanced so rapidly. It was dangerous. It was unpredictable. It had to be stopped. The asteroid, carefully guided by Council technology, struck Earth with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. The impact sent a wall of fire across continents. Tsunamis swallowed coastlines. The sky turned black with dust and ash. Within weeks, the temperature dropped by 30 degrees. Crops failed. Animals died. The great cities of humanity crumbled. From orbit, the Council watched and waited. They expected to see the end of human civilization. They expected chaos, violence, and the slow death of a species that had dared to reach for the stars too soon. They did not expect what happened next. Elena Vasquez had been a construction engineer before the impact. She had built bridges, hospitals, and schools across 3 continents. When the sky went dark and the world began to freeze, she found herself in a small town in the mountains of Peru with 200 survivors, limited food, and no way to contact the outside world. The old ways of thinking said that people would turn on each other. History was full of examples of civilization collapsing into violence when resources became scarce. But Elena had seen something different in her years of building. She had seen people come together after earthquakes, floods, and storms. She had seen strangers become family in the face of disaster. "We have 2 choices," she told the gathered survivors on the 10th day after impact. "We can fight over what little we have left, or we can build something new together." A man named Carlos stepped forward. He had been a farmer before the impact. "The crops are dead. The soil is frozen. How can we build anything?" Elena smiled, though her heart was heavy with fear. "Underground," she said. "We dig. We find warmth beneath the surface. We grow what we can in the dark. We survive." It was not easy. Nothing about those first years was easy. They dug with their hands when the tools broke. They ate things that would have made them sick just months before. They lost people to cold, to hunger, to despair. But they did not give up. In a small chamber deep beneath the frozen surface, Elena organized the first school. Children learned to read by candlelight. They learned mathematics, science, and history. They learned about the stars their parents had once dreamed of reaching. "Why do we need to learn this?" asked a young girl named Sophia. "The world is over." Elena knelt beside her and took her hand. "The world is not over. It has changed. And when it changes again, when the sun returns and the ice melts, we will need to know how to rebuild. We will need doctors and engineers and teachers. We will need dreamers who still look at the stars and wonder what is out there." Sophia thought about this for a long moment. Will we ever go back to the stars? "Yes," Elena said with absolute certainty. "We will, and when we do, we will be stronger than before." Across the dying Earth, similar scenes played out in thousands of scattered communities. In the ruins of Tokyo, a group of survivors used the city's subway tunnels as the foundation for an underground city. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, Russian engineers built geothermal power plants that provided heat and light to thousands. In the mountains of Switzerland, former bankers and farmers worked side by side to carve living spaces from solid rock. The council continued to watch, their confusion growing with each passing year. They had seen civilizations fall before. They knew the pattern. First came denial, then anger, then despair. The survivors would fragment into competing tribes. They would fight over resources until only scattered remnants remained. It had happened to the Korthani when their sun flared. It had happened to the Velrics when plague swept through their worlds. But the humans refused to follow the pattern. They are sharing resources, Zethryx reported to the Council in the 5th year after impact. Communities that have food are sending it to communities that have none. They are communicating through old radio systems, coordinating their efforts. High Counselor Morthax dismissed her concerns. Temporary cooperation. When the food runs out completely, they will turn on each other. But the food did not run out. Human ingenuity found ways to grow crops in underground chambers lit by artificial lights. They developed new strains of plants that could survive in the harsh conditions. They domesticated insects for protein and learned to recycle every drop of water. In the 10th year after impact, something remarkable happened. A convoy of vehicles emerged from the underground city of New Denver and made the dangerous journey across the frozen plains to a struggling community in what had once been Kansas. They brought food, medicine, and something even more valuable: hope. "We heard your radio signals," said the convoy leader, a woman named Maria Chen. "We knew you were struggling, so we came." The Kansas survivors had been on the edge of giving up. Their crops had failed. Their children were sick. They had begun to lose faith that rescue would ever come. "Why?" asked their leader, a man who had once been a high school teacher. "Why risk your lives for strangers?" Maria looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death but still held a spark of determination. "Because that is who we are. Because if we do not help each other, then we have already lost. The impact may have destroyed our cities, but it will not destroy our humanity." The council watched this scene through their hidden observation drones. For the first time, they began to feel something they had not expected: uncertainty. "Perhaps we underestimated them," Zethryx said quietly. "Impossible," Morthax replied. "They are a young species, they will fall eventually. All species do." But even as he spoke, the humans were proving him wrong. In the darkness beneath their wounded world, they were building something new. They were creating connections between scattered communities, sharing knowledge and resources, forming the foundation of a new civilization. And in the schools they built underground, children still learned to look at the stars and dream. 20 years had passed since the asteroid impact. The surface of Earth remained harsh and cold, but the underground cities had grown and connected. Tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers, linking communities that had once been isolated. Trade routes carried goods and people between settlements. A new government had formed, not based on old nations or borders, but on the simple principle of mutual survival. Elena Vasquez, now in her 60s, stood before the first Congress of United Earth. Representatives from every surviving community had gathered in the great chamber carved beneath what had once been the Swiss Alps. The room was lit by panels that mimicked sunlight, a technology developed by human engineers who refused to let their people forget what the sun looked like. "We have survived," Elena said, her voice strong despite her age. 20 years ago the sky fell, our cities burned, our people died by the billions, the universe tried to break us." She paused, looking out at the faces before her. There were people of every race and background, united not by blood or nationality but by shared struggle. "But we are still here. We have built new cities beneath the earth. We have fed our children and taught them to dream. We have turned our tragedy into triumph." The Congress erupted in applause, but Elena raised her hand for silence. "This is not the end. It is only the beginning. Our ancestors looked at the stars and wondered. Our parents built rockets and reached the moon, then Mars, then the outer planets. The impact set us back, but it did not stop us. Nothing will stop us." She gestured to a large screen behind her. On it appeared plans for something impossible, a new space program, built from the resources of their underground civilization. "We will return to space," Alina declared. "We will rebuild our stations and our colonies, and we will find out who sent that asteroid to destroy us." The chamber fell silent. This was the first time anyone in leadership had publicly acknowledged what many had long suspected. The asteroid's trajectory had been too precise, its timing too convenient. It had not been a random act of nature. It had been an attack. "Someone tried to kill us," Alina continued. "They failed, and when we meet them again, we will show them what humanity can do when it refuses to die." In the observation station orbiting Earth, Ambassador Zethrix watched Alina's speech with growing alarm. She immediately transmitted a report to the Council. "They know," she said. "They have figured out the asteroid was not natural, and they are rebuilding their space program." High Counselor Morthax received the news with disbelief. "Impossible. Their technology was destroyed. Their infrastructure is gone. They cannot possibly have the resources to return to space." But he was wrong. In the underground factories of New Tokyo, human engineers were already constructing new rockets using materials recycled from the ruins of the old world. In the laboratories of New Geneva, scientists were developing more efficient propulsion systems than anything humanity had possessed before the impact. In the academies of New Moscow, young astronauts were training for missions that would have seemed impossible just years before. The humans had learned something from their near extinction. They were not alone in the universe, and whatever was out there was not friendly. This knowledge drove them forward with a determination that bordered on obsession. Dr. James Okonkwo was one of the lead engineers on the new space program. He had been a teenager when the impact happened, living in a small town in Nigeria. He had watched his parents die in the first winter. He had walked hundreds of kilometers to reach a surviving settlement. He had educated himself using salvaged books and improvised experiments. Now he stood before the first rocket humanity had built since the impact, a sleek vessel designed to reach Mars and establish a new colony. "She is beautiful," he said to his colleague, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Yuki smiled. "She will carry our hopes back to the stars." "And our warnings," James added grimly. "Whatever is out there needs to know we are not easy to kill." The launch was scheduled for the 30th anniversary of the impact. It was a symbolic choice, a message to both humanity and whatever forces had tried to destroy them. 30 years ago, you struck us down. Today, we rise again. The Council watched the launch preparations with growing concern. They had expected humans to remain confined to their wounded planet for millennia. They had expected the impact to remove humanity from the galactic stage permanently. Instead, humans were returning to space faster than ever before. "We should strike again," Morthax argued. "Another asteroid larger this time, eliminate them completely." But Zethrix shook her head. "It will not work. They are prepared now. They have detection systems watching the sky. They have weapons capable of deflecting incoming objects. If we attack again, they will know for certain it was us." "Then what do you suggest?" Morthax demanded. Zethrix was silent for a long moment. She had studied humans for decades. She had watched them suffer and struggle and refuse to surrender. She had seen them build civilization from rubble, create beauty from destruction, find hope in the darkest of times. "I suggest we prepare," she said finally. "They will find us eventually, and when they do, I am not certain we can stop them." The rocket launched on schedule. It carried 20 colonists, 10,000 embryos frozen for future growth, and enough equipment to establish a self-sustaining base on Mars. But it also carried something else, a message. The message was broadcast on every frequency, in every language humans knew, and in mathematical patterns that any intelligent species could decode. It said simply, "We are humanity. You tried to destroy us. You failed. We are coming." The Council received this message 3 days after the launch. For the first time in recorded history, the chamber fell completely silent. No one knew what to say. A young species, barely out of its infancy by galactic standards, had survived their best attempt at extinction. Not only survived but thrived. Not only thrived but rebuilt. And now they were returning to space with full knowledge that they had been attacked. High Counselor Morthax looked at the message on his display screen. The words seemed to burn into his consciousness. "What have we done?" he whispered. No one had an answer. 50 years after the impact, humanity had established permanent colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. Mining operations in the asteroid belt provided raw materials for a rapidly expanding space industry. Generation ships were under construction, designed to carry humans to nearby star systems. But most importantly, humanity had found them. Dr. Sarah Kim had been searching for evidence of alien intelligence for 20 years. She led a team of scientists at the New Geneva Observatory, a massive installation built on the surface of the moon. Their equipment could detect signals from across the galaxy, and for 2 decades, they had listened for any sign of the beings who had tried to destroy Earth. On a quiet night in the 51st year after impact, they finally found what they were looking for. "It is a transmission," Sarah said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Artificial, structured, coming from a system about 200 light-years away." Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, ran the signal through their translation algorithms. The technology had been developed specifically for this purpose, designed to decode any intelligent communication. "It is a council transmission," he reported. "They are discussing us." Sarah leaned forward. "What are they saying?" Marcus listened for a long moment, then looked at her with wide eyes. "They are afraid of us." The transmission revealed everything. The Galactic Council, an organization of thousands of species spanning the galaxy, their policy of eliminating fast-advancing species before they could pose a threat. The asteroid attack on Earth, carefully planned and executed to stop humanity's rapid expansion. And now, their growing fear that humanity could not be stopped. Sarah transmitted the findings to Earth immediately. Within hours, the information had spread across every human settlement in the solar system. For the first time, humanity knew exactly what they faced. The reaction was not what the Council expected. President Chen Wei addressed the combined populations of Earth and its colonies in a broadcast that reached billions. "We now know the truth," he said. "We were not victims of random chance. We were targets of a deliberate attack by an alien civilization that feared our potential. They tried to destroy us because we grew too fast, learned too quickly, reached too far." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "They were right to fear us, but not because we are dangerous, because we are relentless, because we refuse to accept limits, because when the universe knocks us down, we get back up and build something stronger." The president's expression hardened. "The council thought they could break us with one blow. They were wrong. Now they will learn what happens when you try to destroy humanity and fail." In the underground cities of Earth, in the domed settlements of Mars, in the floating stations of Europa, humanity prepared for what was to come, not with fear but with determination. They had survived extinction once. They would not give anyone a second chance. The Council received reports of humanity's mobilization with growing alarm. Ships were being built at an astonishing rate. Weapons were being developed that matched or exceeded Council technology. Human colonies were spreading across the outer solar system like seeds in the wind. "We must act now," Morthax argued. "If we wait, they will become too strong to stop." But Zethrix shook her head. "It is already too late. Look at what they have accomplished in 50 years. They rebuilt their civilization from ruins. They returned to space faster than any species in history. They discovered our existence and our crime, and now they are coming for us." She pulled up data on her display. Our projections say they will have faster-than-light capability within 20 years. Our military analysts say they will match our combat strength within 50, and their population is growing exponentially as their colonies expand. Then we destroy them now, Morthax insisted. Send the fleet, burn every world they inhabit. And how do you propose we do that? Zethryx asked coldly. They have detection systems that will see us coming from light years away. They have weapons that can destroy entire fleets. They have built their new civilization specifically to survive attack. We cannot destroy them with force. Then what do we do? Zethryx was silent for a long moment. She had spent her entire career studying dangerous species, developing strategies to neutralize them before they could threaten the Council. But humanity was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Most species, when faced with extinction-level threats, collapsed into chaos. They fought among themselves for resources. They fragmented into competing factions. They lost their ability to cooperate on a large scale. But humans did the opposite. When threatened, they united. When knocked down, they got back up. When their civilization was destroyed, they built a new one from the rubble. I do not know, Zethryx admitted finally. For the first time in my career, I genuinely do not know what to do. On Earth, in the Great Chamber of the United Congress, a new generation of leaders was taking their place. Elena Vasquez had died 5 years before, but her legacy lived on in the civilization she had helped build. Her granddaughter, Maria Vasquez, now served as director of the Interstellar Initiative. Maria stood before the Congress with the same determination her grandmother had shown decades before. We have 20 years before we can reach the Council's home systems, she said. 20 years to prepare, to build, to train. 20 years to decide who we want to be when we meet the beings who tried to destroy us. A representative from the Mars colony spoke up. What options do we have? Attack, diplomacy, isolation. Maria considered the question carefully. All three are possible. We could build a fleet and strike at their heart. We could send ambassadors and try to negotiate. We could retreat into our own space and build defenses that make us untouchable. She paused. But I believe there is a fourth option, one that our ancestors would have understood, one that the Council will never expect. What option is that? The representative asked. Maria smiled, and in that smile was the echo of Elena's determination, James's ingenuity, and the countless other humans who had refused to surrender to despair. We show them what we have built, Maria said. Not our weapons, not our armies, our civilization, our art, our music, our literature, our schools and hospitals and parks, our children playing in artificial sunlight beneath the ruins of our old cities. We show them that they tried to destroy us and instead they made us stronger. We show them that humanity cannot be broken. The Congress was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, one representative began to applaud. Then another. Then the entire chamber was on its feet, cheering for a future that had seemed impossible just decades before. The universe had tried to break humanity, but humanity had other plans. The first human faster-than-light ship, named Resolution, launched 72 years after the asteroid impact. It carried a crew of 100, a cargo hold full of cultural artifacts, and a message of peace to the beings who had tried to destroy them. Captain David Okonkwo, grandson of Dr. James Okonkwo, stood on the bridge as the stars stretched and blurred around them. His grandmother had been one of the original Mars colonists. His father had helped design the drive systems that now propelled Resolution faster than light itself. Course confirmed, his navigator reported. We will reach the Velari home system in 3 weeks. David nodded slowly. Send a message ahead. Let them know we are coming. The message was simple and direct. This is the human vessel Resolution. We come in peace. We wish to talk. The Council received the message with a mix of terror and disbelief. For 70 years, they had watched humanity rebuild. They had seen the underground cities grow and expand. They had witnessed the return to space and the rapid colonization of the solar system. They had observed the development of technologies that matched or exceeded their own. And now humanity was coming to them. High Counselor Morthax had died 20 years before, replaced by a new generation of leaders who had grown up in the shadow of the human crisis. The current High Counselor, Vethris, had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "We should meet them with force," one of his advisors argued. "Destroy their ship before it reaches our space." "And if we fail?" Vethris asked. "What then? We have seen what happens when we try to destroy humanity. They rebuild, they adapt, they come back stronger. If we attack this ship and fail to destroy it, we will confirm everything they believe about us. We will unite them against us completely." "Then what do you suggest?" the advisor demanded. Vethris looked at the tactical display showing the approaching human vessel. One small ship, carrying 100 humans. Against the combined military might of the Council, it was nothing, but it represented something far more dangerous than weapons or soldiers. It represented hope. "We talk," Vethris said finally. "We listen to what they have to say, and we try to understand what kind of species can survive what we did to them and still choose to come in peace." The resolution arrived at the edge of Velori space on schedule. A Council escort fleet met them, hundreds of ships bristling with weapons. Captain Okonkwo looked at the display showing the massive armada and smiled. "Impressive," he said. "They must be very afraid of us." His first officer, Commander Alina Chen, nodded. "Should we be worried?" "No," David replied. "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it by now. They are showing us their strength because they do not know what else to do." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel. Tell them we accept their invitation to talk." The meeting took place on a neutral station in deep space. The Council sent a delegation of 50 representatives from various species. Humanity sent Captain Okonkwo and 9 members of his crew. Vethris looked at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They were small compared to most Council species, physically unremarkable in almost every way. Yet this species had survived extinction, rebuilt their civilization, developed faster-than-light travel, and crossed the galaxy to find the beings who had tried to destroy them. "You came in peace," Vethris said slowly. "After what we did to you, why?" Captain Okonkwo considered the question carefully. He thought about his grandmother, who had helped build the first Mars colony. He thought about his father, who had spent his life developing the technology that made this moment possible. He thought about the billions of humans who had died in the impact, and the billions more who had survived and refused to give up. "Because revenge would not bring them back," David said finally. "The people you killed, the civilization you destroyed. Revenge would not restore what we lost. It would only create more death, more destruction, more pain." He leaned forward, looking directly at Vethris. "We could destroy you. We have the technology, the resources, the will. We could burn your worlds the way you burned ours. We could make you feel everything we felt when the sky fell and our children starved in the darkness." Vethris flinched, but David continued. "But that is not who we are. That is not who we want to be. We did not survive extinction just to become the kind of species that commits genocide. We survived because we refused to let tragedy turn us into monsters." He gestured to the artifacts his crew had brought: paintings, sculptures, music recordings, books. The creative output of a civilization that had been nearly destroyed and had rebuilt itself from nothing. "This is what we built while you watched and waited for us to die. Art and music and literature, schools and hospitals and communities. We took the rubble of our old world and made something new, something beautiful, something that will last long after the pain of the impact has faded." David stood and walked toward Vethris, stopping just a few meters away. "You tried to destroy us because you were afraid of what we might become. You were right to be afraid. We have become something you never expected. We have become survivors. We have become builders. We have become a species that refuses to let the universe break us." He extended his hand, the traditional human gesture of peace. "The question now is, what will you become? Will you continue to be the species that kills young civilizations out of fear, or will you choose to be something better?" Vethris looked at the extended hand. In all his years of study, in all his preparation for this moment, he had never imagined it would come to this. He had expected demands for reparations, threats of war, anger and hatred and desire for revenge. He had not expected forgiveness. "You would make peace with us?" he asked quietly, "after everything we did?" David nodded. "Peace is not forgetting. Peace is not pretending the past did not happen. Peace is choosing to build a future despite the past. It is the hardest thing any species can do. It is also the most important." He kept his hand extended, waiting. In that moment, watching this small human offer peace to the beings who had nearly destroyed his entire species, Vethris finally understood why the Council had been so afraid. It was not human technology or resources or military potential that made them dangerous. It was their capacity for hope. No matter what the universe threw at them, no matter how many times they were knocked down, humans kept getting back up. They kept building. They kept dreaming. They kept believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That kind of hope was more dangerous than any weapon. It was also more valuable than anything the Council had ever possessed. Vethris reached out and took David's hand. "Then we choose to be something better," he said. 100 years after the asteroid impact, the galaxy was unrecognizable from what it had been before. The Galactic Council still existed, but it had been transformed. Humanity had not conquered or destroyed it. Instead, they had joined it, bringing with them their relentless optimism and their stubborn refusal to accept limits. The policy of eliminating young species had been abolished. In its place, the Council now sent mentors to guide emerging civilizations, helping them avoid the mistakes of the past. Human ambassadors were particularly sought after for this role, valued for their ability to understand what it meant to face extinction and survive. Dr. Maya Vasquez, great-great-granddaughter of Alina, served as humanity's chief representative to the Council. She stood in the same chamber where her ancestor had once declared that humanity would return to the stars. But now that chamber was on a station orbiting a world 1,000 light-years from Earth. 100 years ago, Maya said to the assembled delegates, "My ancestor stood before the first Congress of United Earth and promised that humanity would find out who had tried to destroy us. She promised that we would show them what we are capable of when we refuse to die." Maya looked around the chamber. There were representatives from hundreds of species, including the Velori who had once tried to destroy humanity. Ambassador Zethrix's granddaughter now served as one of humanity's closest allies. "We found you, we showed you, and now together we are building something greater than any of us could have built alone." She gestured to a massive display behind her. It showed the galaxy as it was now, thousands of inhabited worlds connected by trade routes and communication networks. Human colonies had spread across dozens of star systems, but more importantly, those colonies had become bridges between species that had once been isolated and suspicious of each other. "The universe tried to break humanity," Maya said. "It failed. But that is not the end of the story. The real story is what we built afterward, what we are still building together with all of you." She smiled, and in that smile was the echo of everyone who had come before her. Alina, who had dug the first underground shelters, James, who had built the first rockets, David, who had crossed the galaxy to offer peace. "We are not done yet. We will never be done, because that is who we are. We are the species that looks at the impossible and says, 'Let us try.' We are the species that falls down and gets back up. We are the species that turns rubble into civilization and enemies into friends." Maya raised her hand in the traditional human gesture of hope. And this is only the beginning. The chamber erupted in applause from 100 species. In that moment, watching humans and aliens celebrate together, it was hard to remember that they had once been enemies. It was hard to remember that humanity had nearly been destroyed. But the memory remained, carefully preserved in museums and archives across the galaxy. Not as a source of anger or resentment, but as a reminder of what was possible when a species refused to surrender to despair. In the underground cities of Earth, which had been preserved as historical monuments, children still learned the story of the impact and the rebuilding. They walked through the tunnels their ancestors had dug with bare hands. They saw the chambers where crops had been grown in artificial light. They read the journals of the survivors who had refused to give up. And then they looked up at the stars, visible through transparent domes that covered the old shelters, and they dreamed of the future. On Mars, the first permanent human settlement outside Earth had grown into a thriving world of its own. Billions of people lived beneath the red sky, building and creating and exploring. The original colonists were long dead, but their descendants remembered the courage it had taken to leave Earth and start again. On Europa, beneath the ice that covered a world-spanning ocean, humans and other species worked together to explore the alien life that thrived in the dark waters. The discoveries they made were changing science across the galaxy, revealing new possibilities for life in environments that had once been considered impossible. And in the depths of space, new generation ships carried human colonists to distant stars, spreading the species that had once been nearly destroyed across the galaxy. Each ship carried the same message that the Resolution had brought decades before. We come in peace, we wish to talk, we want to build something together. The universe had tried to break humanity. It had thrown asteroids and ice ages, plagues and wars, disasters natural and artificial. It had tested human resolve in every way imaginable. And every time, humanity had refused to break. They had dug shelters when the surface became deadly. They had grown food in darkness when the sun disappeared. They had rebuilt their civilization when their cities crumbled. They had returned to space when their technology was destroyed. They had crossed the galaxy and offered peace to their enemies. They had turned rubble into civilization, again and again and again. Captain Alina Okonkwo, descendant of James and David, stood on the bridge of her ship as it prepared to enter a new star system. Her mission was to make first contact with a recently discovered species, one that had just developed radio communication. "What do you think they will be like?" her first officer asked. Elena smiled. "I do not know, but I know what we will tell them." "What is that?" Elena looked out at the stars, the same stars her ancestors had dreamed about in underground shelters 100 years before. "We will tell them that the universe is vast and dangerous. We will tell them that there are challenges ahead that they cannot imagine. We will tell them that they will face moments when everything seems lost, when it would be easier to give up than to keep fighting." She turned to face her crew. "And then we will tell them that none of that matters, because what defines a species is not the challenges it faces, but how it responds to them. What matters is getting back up when you fall down. What matters is building when others destroy. What matters is choosing hope when despair seems like the only option." Alina sat in her captain's chair as the ship accelerated toward its destination. "The universe tried to break us," she said quietly. "We built civilizations from the rubble, and we are still building." The ship jumped to faster than light, carrying the message of humanity across the stars. Behind it, 100 years of history stretched back to a world that had nearly died. Ahead of it, a future without limits waited to be built. And somewhere in the great void between the stars, the universe watched and wondered what humanity would do next. It did not try to break them anymore. It had learned its lesson. Humanity could not be broken, they could only be challenged, and every challenge just made them stronger. The story of humanity was far from over. It was, as Maya had said, only the beginning. And what a beginning it was.